You'd walk past it 100 times and never notice. Just a garage, dusty, locked, silent. But in that silence, something stirred. Beneath the concrete floor of a forgotten suburban shed, a secret festered, rotting in darkness while life carried on just above it. They said Bob Harrison was just a quiet old man, a retired mechanic who liked to be left alone. But what they didn't know was that every night, as Maple Hollow fell asleep, something inside his garage stayed very much awake. And when the truth finally clawed its way to the surface, it shattered a neighborhood and unearthed a darkness no one was ready to face. This is not just a story about a locked door. This is the story of what was buried beneath it. Welcome to True Crime Hub. Like, subscribe, and stay alert, because evil never announces itself. Maple Hollow, Oregon, was a neighborhood pulled from a postcard. Evergreen Lane was quiet, safe, or so it seemed. Bob Harrison moved in during 1996. Alone, private, unbothered. His garage, triple locked, windowless, off limits, even to family. Kids dared each other to peek through the cracks. Neighbors shrugged off his reclusiveness. Old man stuff. But some noticed strange behaviors, night noises, chemical smells, missing cats. Contractors revealed the garage was Bob's custom request. Reinforced floors, thick insulation, no permits filed. Lexi Ramirez, 17, moved in next door in 2022. Her bedroom window faced the garage. One night, she heard knocking, rhythmic, from beneath the floor. Recordings captured dragging sounds, metallic clinks. Her parents dismissed it, until Lexi played the audio. They confronted Bob. He said it was rats. Bob stopped answering the door. The truck sat unmoved. Mail piled up. Police entered. Bob was dead in his chair, peaceful. A single key sat on the counter, labeled garage. The padlock opened. Rust groaned. The door creaked. Inside, a stale, sour smell. Rows of tools, jars, wires. One patch of cement looked different. It had settled lower. A thin crack zigzagged across it. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Their reaction, immediate, violent, focused. Chisels chipped the floor. Then sledgehammers. Wood panels below. A trapdoor. A ladder. Officers descended. Flashlights barely cut through. Shelves lined the dirt walls. Each labeled. Numbered. Blue tops. Heavy plastic. Twine wrapped. Inside each, human remains. Every body had a tag, name, date, county. He catalogued them like inventory. Names matched missing persons cases. 22 cold cases. All unsolved, until now. A journal detailed each abduction. Notes like, watched her jog. Easy target. Hidden cameras found in old radios. Victims were stalked for months. 1997, a waitress named Danielle. She told friends about a man who watched her from the diner parking lot. He relocated often before Maple Hollow. Disappearances followed his trail. Attended church. Donated to food drives. His mask of normalcy fooled everyone. Found IDs. Earrings. Hair clips. Each matched a victim. Birth certificate found. Name, Richard Bowman. Bob Harrison was an alias. Federal agents began tracking his past. His trail led across 5 states. One woman escaped in 2004. Her sketch of the abductor matched Bob. All victims shared traits. Brown hair, slim build, lived alone. His type was clear. Found under a false wall, a photo collection. Hundreds of images. Surveillance style. Psychology reports suggested early abuse. His mother died in a garage fire. He was 8. Bob's killings were organized. Post-mortem rituals. Repetition. Routine. Journal ended in 2017, she screamed. Can't risk again. Had he stopped? Or just changed tactics? Built with drainage, airflow, electricity. He prepared it like a bunker. Forensic dating showed multiple cement layers. He expanded the cellar over time. That's what media called him. The man who killed quietly and kept them. Some wept. Others were furious. He kept her sweater for 15 years, one father said. The garage was torn down. A small garden now honors the lost lives. Cold cases reopened nationwide. Bob's DNA matched traces in 4 states. A Netflix deal. Documentaries. Podcasts. But families asked, don't glorify him. Maple Hollow held vigils for each victim. Lexi Ramirez was honored for speaking up. Critics asked why early reports were ignored. A task force was formed to review past negligence. Urban legends formed. New residents ask, is this where the killer lived? In the end, it wasn't a confession that cracked the case. It wasn't high-tech forensics. It was a teenage girl listening to her instincts, and a locked door finally opened. Let this be a reminder, never ignore the whispers. Never overlook the quiet ones. Because sometimes, the most ordinary place hides the most extraordinary horror. Subscribe to True Crime Hub for more real stories that demand to be told. Like, share, speak the names of the lost. And remember, evil hides where no one thinks to look. Let's continue. What haunted the basement after Bob's death wasn't just the memory of his victims, it was the silence. Crime scene investigators and forensic psychologists described it as the coldest room they'd ever stood in. The cellar had no light of its own. It swallowed sound. No birdsong from outside. No breeze. Just stale, unmoving air. The way Bob had built it made the entire space feel timeless, like it had existed beneath Maple Hollow long before any of the homes above it were even conceived. But beneath the horror was one more detail few dared to whisper aloud: the scent. Beneath the chemicals and mold was something more organic, something that smelled like time stopped and sorrow crystallized. Forensic teams working the scene changed gloves every 10 minutes to cope with decomposition despite the preserved state of the remains. It wasn't just about collecting evidence, it was about surviving the presence of death itself. The cellar's construction provided critical insights into Bob's psyche. He didn't build it out of panic or impulse. It was designed, measured, carefully layered with ventilation, noise suppression, and selective drainage. Experts later concluded that he had spent months, if not years, preparing it. One FBI profiler noted, "This wasn't a killer with rage. This was a man with ritual. He didn't just want them hidden. He wanted them preserved." And there was one more horrifying revelation. In the farthest corner of the cellar, behind a fake wall concealed by shelving units, was a small, enclosed chamber, barely big enough for a single person to crawl into. Inside, detectives found claw marks on the concrete, tiny fragments of fingernail, blood long dried. It hadn't just been a storage space. It had been a cage. In Bob Harrison's study, tucked in a closet behind his bedroom, a second horror unfolded. A room filled with surveillance equipment, monitors, VHS tapes stacked floor to ceiling, outdated camcorders, and a notebook cataloging footage. For years, Bob had followed his victims not just in person, but remotely. He recorded them, sometimes for weeks, sometimes for months. Morning routines, evening walks, moments of joy, each reduced to grainy footage on aging magnetic tape. The FBI transported the tapes to Quantico for digital conversion. There were over 700 labeled recordings. The earliest dated back to 1995, before Bob even moved to Maple Hollow. One of the earliest tapes was labeled, "Anna, First Watch." Anna Kemp, a missing woman from Spokane, Washington, vanished in 1995 after a dentist appointment. The footage revealed her leaving her office, being followed discreetly by Bob's old truck, and a final clip of her entering her apartment building. She was never seen again. More disturbing than the quantity was the intimacy. Bob didn't just stalk his victims. He learned them. Tape logs included details like she hums while brushing, or cries after phone calls. Lonely. It wasn't just hunting. It was observation bordering on obsession. This information gave authorities new leads in multiple unsolved cases, and in at least one instance, exonerated a man wrongfully imprisoned for murder. One particular tape broke the room into tears, a little girl playing in her backyard. Her name was Emily Ford. Her disappearance in 2006 devastated the community. And there she was, captured by a voyeur she never knew existed. The final frame of the tape, Bob's gloved hand reaching through the chain-link fence. Forensic psychologists labeled Bob's method as pathologically detached empathy. He watched them to feel human, but he couldn't relate. He mimicked emotion without experiencing it. His collection wasn't trophies. It was stolen intimacy. Alongside the journal found near the workbench was a box of smaller, leather-bound notebooks, each chronologically labeled. They became known as the basement diaries. Inside them were not just lists, but full narratives. Bob detailed what he called his harvests, with frightening detachment. Each entry began with a location, a time, and the word target. Names followed, sometimes fake, sometimes full. Then came the entries, followed her to school. Laughs with friends. Doesn't see me. The entries grew more personal. She sings off-key. Still beautiful. But the most horrifying section of each diary came at the end. Bob's post-mortem notes. He described the moments before the killings in chilling detail, the expressions, the pleas, the final breaths. He recorded how long they lived, how he silenced them, how he buried them. He also wrote about regret, not for what he'd done, but for those he couldn't catch. Too many people, he wrote in one. Watched by cameras. She noticed me. Moved on. In one particularly disturbing entry, Bob described how he had considered taking his own life in 2010. Not because I'm done, he wrote, but because there are no more quiet ones. The diary ended with this quote: "The silence I love isn't outside. It's beneath them." These journals, when analyzed by criminal profilers, revealed what experts call a rare combination of obsessive compulsion and psychopathic planning. He was methodical, clean, but not without ego. He didn't believe he would get caught. In fact, it seemed he hoped one day someone would find it all. He didn't just bury the bodies. He buried his story, hoping someone would dig it up. Just when it seemed the horror had peaked, a late-night phone call shattered whatever fragments of peace the town clung to. Detective Claire Monroe, still buried in the aftermath of the garage discovery, was jolted awake by the sharp ring of her landline. She picked up, expecting another update on the case, but what she heard instead sent icy chills down her spine. A woman's trembling voice whispered, "He's watching me." His back. Claire recognized the voice. It was Rachel McCarthy, the sister of one of the missing girls presumed dead. Rachel had disappeared from public view after her sister's case went cold, avoiding reporters, detectives, and even neighbors. But now, she was calling in pure terror. "Rachel, where are you? Are you safe?" Claire asked, sitting up straight. Rachel's voice quivered. "I thought it was over. But I found a note in my mailbox, with her locket, my sister's locket." Claire dressed in seconds, adrenaline drowning out exhaustion. Within 30 minutes, she was at Rachel's countryside home. Rachel handed her a weathered silver locket and a torn piece of paper with 5 chilling words written in red ink. "You're next. I never left." Rachel hadn't told anyone else. She feared they would dismiss her. But Claire didn't. She knew this wasn't over. The killer hadn't stopped. He had merely gone quiet. The locket had dried blood caked in the hinge. Forensics would confirm what they already feared. It belonged to Emily, Rachel's sister, who had vanished 3 years earlier. This revelation opened a new theory. Was the garage just a piece of a larger network? Was there a second site? Had they only scratched the surface? Forensic techs swarmed Rachel's home. The note was bagged. The locket rushed to analysis. Meanwhile, Claire walked the edge of Rachel's wooded backyard, her instincts gnawing at her. Something felt off. There was a clearing at the far edge, too open, too symmetrical. It looked like a space where something once stood. She called in ground radar, and within hours, the team confirmed it. Beneath the earth lay another sealed structure. It wasn't a bunker. It was a container. A shipping container buried 6 feet under. Claire's heart pounded as excavation began. The air filled with metallic groans as the rusted steel box was unearthed. What they found inside was even more horrific than the garage. Chains, mirrors, blank notebooks filled with scribbled pages, drawings of eyes, countless eyes, watching, and in the center, a wooden chair, bolted to the floor. The realization was sickening. This wasn't just storage. It was a chamber of control, of experimentation, of terror. The killer had built more than one room, more than one prison, and this was newer than the garage. Claire stepped outside to catch her breath. She looked back toward the woods and whispered to herself, "How many more?" Among the horrific artifacts in the buried container was a rusted lockbox filled with notebooks. Each one dated, each one chronicling something beyond comprehension. The writing was frantic, disjointed, like someone on the brink of madness. But the details were too specific to be fiction. Names of victims, psychological profiles, behavioral experiments. It was as if the killer saw himself as both scientist and predator. Each victim had been observed, chosen for how they reacted to fear, to pain, to solitude. Claire spent hours with the pages, each entry pulling her deeper into a mind unhinged but methodical. The journals referred to the garage as Cell A. The container was Cell B. And one phrase kept repeating in blood-red ink. Cell C is almost ready. A third location. Active. Prepped. Not yet discovered. Claire summoned her team. They had to move fast. If Cell C was ready, someone might already be inside it. Digital footprints and a pattern emerges. The journals provided physical evidence. But it was a search through the killer's digital life that revealed the next step. IT forensics recovered encrypted files from hard drives found near the garage. After hours of decryption, the data told a terrifying story. The killer had documented everything. Surveillance footage, audio logs, victim entries, a digital map. And there it was, a red dot blinking in a remote stretch of forest 80 miles from the garage. Claire didn't wait. She took a small team and headed out, following a faded trail into the trees. Hours passed. Dusk fell. But then, they found it. A third structure. Camouflaged. Reinforced. Silent. As they approached, Claire's heart thundered. She reached for the handle, and the door creaked open on its own. Inside cell C, the scent hit them first. Bleach. Mold. And something else. Something rotten. Flashlights revealed a long hallway, lined with crude insulation and soundproofing foam. There were 4 rooms, each locked, each bearing a painted number. In room 2, they found a girl. Alive, emaciated, eyes wide, skin pale and trembling. She couldn't speak, just pointed to the walls. Etched into the surface were desperate messages. He wears a mask. Don't look at his eyes. He takes the silence with him. She had been there for months, maybe longer. Claire's team rescued her, but it wasn't over. In the final room, they found something worse. A set of blueprints, labeled Cell D in progress. It wasn't just a killer. It was an operation, a methodology, a twisted system. The garage was only the beginning. The town had begun to crack under the pressure of unanswered questions. Murmurs that once floated in hushed whispers behind coffee counters and late-night bar shifts had now turned into loud accusations, some thrown carelessly, others like daggers at old neighbors. The locked garage had revealed more than just a body. It exposed generations of silence, secrets, and unhealed wounds. Detective Carla Ruiz had barely slept. Her apartment was littered with files, the floor near her couch a nest of cold coffee cups and red-marked maps. The puzzle didn't make sense. Every time she thought she'd found the last piece, something new surfaced. A voicemail here, a birth certificate there. Then there were the emails, encrypted and anonymous, sent to her city-issued inbox from an address that didn't trace. But that morning, a thick manila envelope arrived at her doorstep. No return address, no postage, just one word on the front, scrawled in a jagged hand: confession. She opened it slowly, her gloved fingers trembling. Inside were 10 handwritten pages and an old photograph. It was the garage, but decades ago. Standing in front were 3 people. One she recognized instantly, Margaret Levens, the now-deceased widow whose home had hidden the buried nightmare. The second, a young man who looked like her late husband. The third, unmistakable. It was the town's sheriff. The document was chilling. In the shaky handwriting, the author admitted to witnessing something. A murder. But what was worse than the act itself was the coordinated silence that followed. The letter spoke of a deal, a pact made out of fear, shame, and power. It wasn't just Margaret and her husband. The sheriff, 2 other unnamed figures, and possibly the town judge had all played a part. Carla read the confession 3 times. Then she pulled out her phone and called the DA. But the line rang, and kept ringing. She glanced back at the photo. The young sheriff in the picture, all confident grin and polished badge, looked nothing like the man she'd seen the day before at the county meeting. Time had changed him. But now she wondered, had it hardened his conscience or simply helped him forget? The confession ended with a chilling line. I've held this secret too long. My hands may not have dug the grave, but they stayed clean while someone else's were buried. We all are guilty. The DA never answered. Hours later, Carla drove to the sheriff's residence, parking a street over. She didn't radio in. She didn't call back up. There were too many ears listening. Too many people she no longer trusted. His home sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, pristine and surrounded by rose bushes. A white fence, a swing hanging from a tree. Nothing about it screamed corruption. But Carla had learned long ago, evil doesn't always knock with dirty boots. Sometimes it wears Sunday shoes. She rang the bell. No answer. She rang again. Then, noticing movement from the window upstairs, she stepped back, her hand on her holster. The door creaked open. The sheriff stood there, no badge, just a plain white shirt, and his face pale. Not the surprise of a man caught off guard, but of one who had been waiting. I wondered how long it would take you, he said. I read the letter. He nodded slowly. Then you already know what I'm about to confess. Inside, the living room was quiet. A fireplace crackled despite the summer heat. The sheriff motioned for her to sit, but Carla remained standing. "I didn't kill him," he began. "But I was there. I let it happen." She didn't interrupt. Just recorded. "We thought he was going to ruin everything. He had evidence. About the judge. About the money. He threatened to go public. Who killed him?" If this story disturbed you as much as it moved Margaret's husband hit that like button. He panicked. Subscribe for more hauntingly true stories. One blow. And it should have ended so you never miss the truth. But we panicked beneath the surface. You buried the body under your neighbor's garage. Leave your thoughts in the comments. He nodded. "Do you think it was my idea this all along?" Carla's hand simply a master manipulator caught in his own game to protect the town. Stay tuned for our next episode. That's what I told here on True Crime Hub. There was silence. The truth isn't just stranger than protecting ourselves. It's deadlier. Our reputations. Our futures. She leaned forward. "You're going to testify." He didn't argue. "I'm tired of carrying his ghost," he whispered. The next week, the news exploded. Local media camped outside the courthouse. National reporters flew in. Old rumors resurfaced. A documentary crew arrived by Thursday. The story had all the makings of scandal, corruption, betrayal, murder, and a decades-old cover-up involving those sworn to uphold the law. Carla sat through 3 days of preliminary hearings. Each testimony chipped away at the town's polished surface. Witnesses came forward, former employees, retired clerks, even the town's aging librarian, confirming strange disappearances, deleted files, and a pattern of intimidation. The most devastating moment came when the sheriff, in uniform, took the stand. He didn't cry. He didn't beg. He simply told the truth. "I failed. I let fear dictate justice." In the back row, a woman wept. The daughter of the man buried beneath the garage. She had never known what happened to her father. Until now. Justice was coming. Late. But finally, it had arrived. They stood in silence. Only the echo of their own breathing filled the garage as the last concrete slab was hoisted aside. Beneath it was a false floor, wooden, rotting, and clearly out of place. Detective Navarro knelt and shined his flashlight through the gaps. Something glinted beneath the wood. Tools were fetched, the boards pried apart, and then they saw it. A box. Old, rusted, yet carefully placed. As Navarro lifted it out with gloved hands, the room seemed to freeze in time. Inside, dozens of photographs, newspaper clippings, locks of hair, and small personal items, all trophies. All from the victims. It was proof. Evidence of a serial killer who had hidden in plain sight. The photos, organized by date, showed faces reported missing across the last 20 years, none of whom had ever been linked to this neighborhood. Until now. And then, at the very bottom of the box, a journal. A meticulous, blood-chilling account of each murder. The journal of a killer. Navarro opened the first page. The handwriting was delicate, almost elegant. "They never suspected," it began. Each entry detailed a victim. The selection process. The stalking. The capture. The final moments. What shocked everyone most, the killer documented their emotional state. Not of the victims, but of themselves. The joy. The excitement. The satisfaction. And suddenly, the clues fit. The locked garage. The movement under the floor. The whispers the neighbors never quite placed. All of it was part of a pattern, one no one had seen. The journal ended with an unfinished entry. A name. A date. A time that hadn't yet arrived. Navarro looked up, heart racing. It was tomorrow. The team scrambled into action. If the entry was real, someone else was about to die. The name listed, Rachel C., was traced within minutes. A woman who lived just 2 blocks away. No apparent connection to the previous victims. Police flooded her street, knocked on her door. No answer. They broke in. Empty. Then they noticed a trail, a thin line of blood leading from her back door through the grass. Toward the woods. Navarro's team followed it into the dense brush behind the neighborhood. And there, in a clearing, was a shallow grave. Recently dug. Rachel was inside. Barely alive. Gagged. Bound. But breathing. Rachel was rushed to the hospital. She had no idea who had taken her. Just a voice behind her while she locked her car. A needle. A hood. Then darkness. She had been meant to die that night. But the discovery of the box had changed everything. The killer had been forced to act early, and had made a mistake. Navarro stared at Rachel as she slept in recovery. A survivor. The first. And that meant something else, too. The killer was still watching. They knew he would come back. The journal said he never left a job unfinished. So they made a decision. Rachel would be moved to a safe house, and her hospital room would be monitored. Cameras. Undercover officers. A sting. 3 nights passed. Nothing. Then, the 4th night, just before dawn, the hallway camera caught movement. A figure. Hooded. Gloved. Carrying something in their hand. They moved toward Rachel's room, and just before they touched the door, Navarro stepped out. "Don't move." The figure froze, then slowly turned. It was someone none of them had expected. The quiet neighbor across the street. Retired. Liked by everyone. He smiled. "You read my journal?" he asked. The man behind the garage's horrors was finally unmasked. He confessed to everything. Every detail from the journal was verified. The trophies matched missing person reports. DNA tests confirmed remains buried deep beneath the garage. It was one of the largest serial murder cases ever uncovered in the region, hidden in a quiet suburb. And it was nearly missed. Rachel survived. The town grieved. The garage was demolished. But the fear remains. How many others like him are still out there? Quiet, smiling, seemingly harmless. Because the real monsters, they don't wear masks. They live next door. Move a camera if this chilling case gripped you like it did us. Hit that like button and share this video. Speech Balloon, have you ever noticed something suspicious in your neighborhood? Tell us in the comments. Bell, don't forget to subscribe to True Crime Hub for more stories that uncover the darkness lurking beneath the surface. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and remember, trust is earned, not given.